a recording and see how that goes. I hope we can keep doing this. It told me 45 minutes. So if it stops after 45 minutes, I put up another meeting so we can go to that quickly. Okay, then guys, anyway, I'm going to get straight into it. And I'm just going to go into screen share. I'm just going to take you through a review of the sociocultural theory stuff we've been doing, because I think that's going to be kind of important for you guys. And I think it fits in with a lot of the stuff you've done this semester. Let's have a look. No, okay. Oh, by the way, I've also put up the chapter there, and you can access that from web class if you want. All right, but I'm going to basically take you through that. So let's do that. All right then. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be kind of introduction to sociocultural theory. And as I've mentioned before, the mainstream mainstream second language acquisition, and I suppose mainstream linguistics, kind of fits in with the computational theory of mind. I'll just review this briefly. You get kind of input, outputs, like a computer, you put something in, get something out. You provide some stimulus, linguistic stimulus, something goes on in the head, we don't know what. And then this kind of gives you some kind of improvement to the language faculty, universal grammar, whatever you want to call it. They call it kind of a black box approach. You put some input in, you get some output, and don't really know what's going on inside. And of course, that fits in with the universal grammar, generative grammar theory of language. And sociocultural theory isn't really like that. I mean, sociocultural theory isn't really a theory of language so much. It's not really a theory of second language acquisition. It's actually a theory of mental development, right? And the basic idea with sociocultural theory is it's mediated by cultural tools, yeah. And I would say, there are linguistic theories that support that, that fit with it. Some people say not, right? They say there is no theory of language for sociocultural theory. I'm not really sure of that. I would say, cognitive linguistics generally fits in with sociocultural theory. Sign-based approaches, I think, do fit in. Yeah, for example, you've got things like this. This would be head-driven phrase structure grammar, where language is treated as a system of signs, essentially. So you've got a word like walks, for example. Yeah. There's phonological information, there's the sound information there. And then you've got the SYNSEM is going to be the syntactic and grammatical and semantic information. So category is the syntactic information, the grammatical information, and then content is the semantic information. Yeah. And then, so for example, you have the syntactic information. It says it's a head, it's a verb. And it says, give me a noun phrase as a subject. And then the content of the noun phrase is actually shared in the content of the verb. Yeah. So basically, I mean, the idea there is that it's a sign, right? It's a basic sign. A sign is a pair. It's a kind of form meaning pair. And with a word, it's a special kind of sign where you've got form, you've got meaning, and you've also got grammar. Yeah. So that's that. So anyway, then I just take you through the introduction, that chapter, right? And the basic idea is the sign. We use signs as cultural tools. Yeah. So, there are different kinds of signs. For example, a number could be a sign. An art, a picture could be a sign, and language is a sign. Yeah. And normally you'd say that a sign is a pair. Right? It's a form meaning pair. And with a word, you've got, it's a form meaning pair, but there's also grammar in the middle. Yeah, so a word is a special word, or language is a special kind of sign system, where kind of things are organized by grammar. That's it. Yeah, but basically that's what sociocultural theory is about. It's the use of it's a theory of mental development where mental development is kind of mediated, we say, yeah, by symbolic tools, by signs. And the idea is that tools are created by human culture over time. Yes, it's a kind of historical theory. We get these tools from our ancestors, basically, and they got those tools from their ancestors. So it's kind of, keeps going over time. And symbolic tools then give us an indirect or mediated relationship, between us and the world. Right? So in other words, we don't really kind of act on the world directly. We use tools to act on the world indirectly. And it's a kind of historical approach, right? So we've kind of been over this before. And we've mentioned the phylogenetic domains. Again, this is just a review. And that is really to do with, our development as a species. So you can go back to our ancestors, or kind of monkey people, and the way they started to use tools and develop mentally over time. And then sociocultural domain is kind of more like cultural history, right? So as we would say, Japan, the development of Japan being different from the development of the UK, for example. And then the ontogenetic domain is more to do with development over a lifetime. For example, a child may develop very quickly in a short number of years. And then the microgenetic domain would be like a very, very short time span. Yeah. Like, I don't know, you're doing this class, for example, right? You might just study this class and say, okay, that's the microgenetic domain. And do we have some development in that class? That kind of thing. And we mentioned these experiments, which I want to ask you about, right? The first experiment was young children. They were not, as in clearly game, basically, right? And they say to the young children, you're not allowed to mention certain colors. Yeah. And they told you not to repeat the same color more than once. So, that's the game, right? So you say to young children, you're not allowed to mention certain colors at all. And then you're not to repeat the same color more than once, right? So in other words, so some colors you can't say at all, can't mention, and some colors you shouldn't. With the other colors, you're not allowed to say more than once. And then to play the game, to help the kids, they gave them color cards, and the color cards are symbolic tools. So here's the color. Don't say that, right? Don't say this color, right? And they give them the cards, and then the kids kind of get on with it, right? And think, can they do it? And young children, very young children, just got confused. They couldn't do it at all. Right? They're useless. Didn't matter about the cards, made no difference. Older children could use the cards. Yeah, so in other words, looking at the cards, I mustn't say that, okay. And then, they can do it. And then adolescents and adults just didn't need the cards at all. Yeah. And the basic idea here is that you've got symbolic tools to help, right? Now, how does that work? I mean, we've been over this before, but you've got these, they're using these, cards and saying, okay, there's the card. And, say, for example, I don't know, a red card, right? And you say to the students, okay, don't say that, right? Don't say red, for example, right? And then maybe you've got a green card, right? And you're saying, okay, don't say that, right? And then very young kids, it doesn't make any difference. They can't do it, right? And then the older children looking at the card, slightly older children looking at the cards, and then they can, oh, don't say that. Okay, not going to say that. Doesn't say green, doesn't say red, right? And they can do it. But the adolescents and adults just don't need the cards at all. They can do it, no problem. You say, okay, don't say green, don't say red, and that's it. That's the end of it, right? No problem. But the slightly older children, they do need the cards, right? And the cards are useful. So why is that? What kind of help does that provide? Why does it provide a help? You've got this symbolic tool. How does that work?
Because it's kind of experience connected to the symbols, I think.
Yeah, how does it work though? I mean, you get the symbol, right? I mean, what's actually going on in the head of these kids when they're using those symbols?
I mean, I think not about the language, but kind of image in their head,
right?
When it comes up.
Yeah, there must be some kind of image in the head, right? In other words, you use the card, and this kind of gives you an image in your head. Yeah. So yeah. It's like, would it make sense to you to say that when you use a symbol, right, like a word, for example, or any kind of symbol, basically, sign, that actually kind of controls thinking? Yeah, it's like when you use a symbol, it kind of gives kind of structure to a thought, right, to thinking. And it's like when the kids will see the card, and they'll say, okay, that makes me think, right? There's the symbol, and that makes me think. Say it's a red card, and then the kid says, okay, that makes me think of red, and I mustn't say red. Yeah. So you've got like this. You get the symbol, right? And this symbol gives structure to your thinking. Yeah. And then the thinking kind of feeds into the action, right? So you get the symbol gives structure to the thought, and then the thought kind of then controls or regulates the activity. Yeah. So you see the symbol, right? You see the symbol as a symbol, so maybe a red card. And then this then controls, right? Essentially, so structures the thoughts in the individual. There's the thought is like, there's the red card, and I know I mustn't use that, right? And then this then allows the individual to regulate activity, behavior, right? And in that case, don't say that color name. So I think that's what it is, something like that, right? Because it's like, so in other words, there is something going on inside, as you suggest, right? It's like there's an image or something, right? It's like you can say, well, it's thinking, right? It's just, the symbol structures thought, right? Sort of language structures thought. It gives kind of structure to a thought. So for example, if I give it, this is a bit of a stupid game, but I mean, like people do say this very often. If I said to you now, don't think of an elephant, all right? Don't think of an elephant. Don't think of an elephant, right? Now, are you thinking of an elephant?
Yes.
Yes. I said, don't think of an elephant, right? So in other words, like just by saying elephant, it makes you think of elephant, right? You can't like say, okay, I'm not going to think of it. He's telling me not to think of an elephant, but you can't not think of elephant. Right? Just hearing the word elephant makes you think of it. So in other words, you know, just getting the symbolic, right? That symbolic, that sign, kind of structures your thought. Right? I mean, you can't help it. Right? It just happens automatically. And even if you try not to think of it, it doesn't help. Right? You just think of it. So in other words, symbolic forms, signs, language, they structure thought. Yeah. Anyway, that's basically the idea. I think so. The young children, they're very young children, they can't do it, right? They're kind of too young. They're not able to organize themselves. But for the older ones, they can use these symbolic means. The symbol actually structures the way they think, and then it helps them to avoid using the cards. And the adolescents and the adults don't need it. They've already internalized all this stuff. They can, you know, they get the instructions at the beginning and they have no problem. Yeah. But it seems to me basically what we're looking at here is the idea that symbols, signs, language, structure, thinking. Yeah. Okay, so basically we do that as well. For example, we have these, you know, adults also sometimes need symbolic tools. We mentioned this before. If you're multiplying big numbers, you usually need paper and pencil. You need to write down the numbers, which are symbolic tools, and this helps us to structure our thinking. You know, it helps us to structure our thinking, and then with our thinking is then structured nicely, we're then able to solve the problem. Or most people are. I can't do it, but I mean, most people can do it. And then we got this other light experiment, a different experiment. Again, we've been through this. The idea was that you press a bulb when the light comes on. And you stop pressing so when the green light comes on, you press it, right? And you stop pressing when the red light comes on. And very young children couldn't do it. The green light comes on, maybe they start pressing, but then the red light comes on, they just keep pressing or press harder or something. They just can't do it, right? So very young children can't do it. And older children can do it with verbal direction, right? So, you know, the green light comes on, you start pressing, and then the red light comes on, and then maybe an adult or somebody says, okay, now you stop pressing because the red light's on, and then that helps the older children. Yeah. So again, it seems that basically what you've got there, you've got a game, right? You press a bulb when the green light comes on, you stop pressing when the red light comes on. You use symbolic, right? A sign system, which is words, basically, right? Verbal direction. The adult says, "Okay, now stop pressing. Right? Stop pressing now." Yeah? The older children can do it. Very young children can't do it. You know, like adults say, "Stop pressing," and they just carry on pressing anyway. It doesn't, you know, doesn't help them. But slightly older children, it helps them, right? Sort of verbal direction does help them. So what you've got again is you've got the sign, right? The symbol, the words, say, for example, stop pressing. And then this structures the way the individual thinks, right? So the individual is now thinking, stop pressing, and then the action is then results from that. Yeah. So you've got the symbol, or the word in this case, structures the thinking, and then the thinking then actually regulates the activity. Yeah. So it's a kind of three-way process in a sense. The sign structures thought. Thought regulates behavior. Does that make sense?
Could you say that again, please?
Yeah.
Last place.
Okay. So basically, what it is. Have I got it? Hang on. Have I got a thing? I haven't got it. Hang on. Let me just go here for a second. How do I get it to? Can't do it. Where's the? Should have. Let me see if I can do it here. I know. Okay, this will do probably. Okay. Yeah, I think this is kind of important actually, because it's like it's easy to miss this. So basically, you've got the sign, yeah. So for example, that would be, word, right? And what the word does is, right, the word sign structures thought, yeah. So in other words, like it's a bit like saying, don't think elephant, right? You can't not think elephant. I mean, it just gives you that thought, right? Just like there's no effort involved. Even if you try not to do it, you effortlessly get that, right? So you get the sign comes in, the word comes in, that structures thought, and then, oops, let me just get this down here. And thought regulates behavior or activity. Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, the sign structures thought, right? In other words, the sign makes you think something. Yeah. And then when it makes you think something, then this regulates the activity. Right. This kind of allows you to control the activity. Yeah. So you could say, for example, the word makes you think, and the thought allows you to act. Something like that. So it's kind of a three-way, it's a three-part process in a sense. How about that? Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, good. So I think that's kind of important, because it's like sometimes I think sociocultural theory, it sounds like everything is kind of outside on the outside, but there are internal mechanisms, and in fact, sociocultural theory connects to internal dialogue, thinking all the time. In fact, okay. Anyway, let me just get out of here for a second, and going here. Okay, right. Okay, good. So anyway, with verbal. Yeah, and this is kind of interesting as well. So very young children couldn't do it at all, right? So you got this green light thing comes on. Green light comes on, kids press, and they're supposed to stop pressing when a red light comes on. Very young children can't do it at all. They're useless. Older children can do it if they get help, right? If they get help from an adult, for example, somebody telling them, okay, now stop pressing, right? So they can do it if somebody else tells them. And then still older children, right? I'm not sure exactly how old we're talking about here. Maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 for these older children here, then maybe 6 or 7 for the still older children. And they can do it, but they don't need somebody else to tell them, but they tell themselves, right? So now the very young children, they can't do it. Slightly older children need help from somebody else. I have to tell them to stop pressing. Older than that, again, they don't need anybody else to tell them, but they tell themselves, right? And then oldest group don't need any help at all. It's all kind of completely internalized. Yeah. So it seems that, again, the words, right? The words at a certain stage, the word structures of thinking, yeah, makes you think something, makes me think, the word makes me think, stop pressing, right? Makes me stop pressing, and then I kind of, I'm able to then control my behavior. And then slightly older children, again, they don't need somebody else, they can just tell themselves. But they still need to tell themselves. They still need that, that symbolic help, right? So, oh, and now I stop pressing, right? Oh, you probably, we all do stuff like that, right? Oh, now I'm going to stop pressing. You need that symbolic help, right? The symbol structures your thinking, right? It makes you think something. And then when you think that, then that allows you to regulate your behavior, right? In this case, stop pressing. Yeah. So it seems to be, to me, seems to be basically the same pattern all the time. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to write it down again because I think that's kind of important. Yeah. So you've got, oops, let's have a look. Yeah, I mean, this may say the word, right? The word leads to, I suppose you could say in this case, right? The word gives you the thought, yeah, and then the thought kind of leads to, or kind of gives you the activity, yeah. So in other words, the word, you get a word from somebody else saying stop pressing, then you get a thought, which is for the individual, stop pressing, and then the activity is actually stop pressing. Yeah, but there's still a three-part process to this whole thing. And there is an internal part of it, right, where you actually have to think something. As you said, some kind of image. Don't really know exactly what it is. It's a very complicated, mysterious thinking, but that's the basic idea. Okay, so I think that's all right for the moment. Let me just go into this. And so yeah, the oldest children don't need any help. They're already controlling their sort of everything internally. They can get the thought, right? The thought without being given the symbol. Right? They've already internalized it. They've understood the game, right? They understand what they're supposed to do, and they don't need this help, right, from outside or from their own words. Right? So anyway, and then we got last week we started talking about Uzbek peasants. It wasn't last week, yes it was, yeah, like last Monday, right? Not this Monday because we lost that to the bomb scare. And the Uzbek peasants, they're given a kind of, again, a game, a little problem. They say, you've got a hammer, you've got a saw, you've got a log, you've got a hatchet. And then the game is to say, and also in a similar game, you've got a picture of 3 men and a boy. Yeah? And you can say which one doesn't belong. Right? And the Uzbek peasants, they've never had any education, right? So they look at that and they say, well, they all belong, right? I mean, hammer, saw, log, hatchet, they all belong. And they say, what do you mean they all belong? Well, yeah, they say, well, hammer, you've got hammer, you've got a saw, you've got a hatchet. You need something to work with, which is the log, so they all belong, right? And then the picture of the 3 men and a boy, they say, well, yeah, they all belong. I say, what do you mean they all belong? And they say, well, yeah, you got 3 men are working, and the boy can go and run and help them, and maybe get them some water or get them something they need. and he's really helpful because if he wasn't there, if the boy wasn't there, it's going to take a lot longer, right? So it's like they all belong, right? So the question is, which one doesn't belong? I said, well, they all belong. What are you talking about? And in a way, what do you think about that? I mean, like, how do you respond to that? I mean, what these Uzbek peasants are saying.
Again, please.
Yeah, what do you think about that? This. I mean, these are Uzbek peasants, and they've got this. This is the game, right? They say hammer, saw, log, hatchet, and it's like which one doesn't belong, and the peasants say they all belong. How do you feel about that?
I think log is a different one.
Yeah, it's a different one, right? Yeah. Why is that?
Because hammer, saw, and hatchet are used to cut something.
Yeah.
But log is just a material.
Yeah,
So,
like it's a tool. It's a tool, I suppose, and then a log isn't a tool. What about the 3 men and a boy?
three. I think 3 men are all belong, but boy is not.
Yeah, that's right, because I suppose there's 3 adults and 1 isn't adult, right?
Yes.
So what do you think about the answer then, the Uzbek peasants' answer that, actually they all belong?
Uzbek peasants say 3 men and a boy is all belong because they are all men.
Yeah, I suppose they're all men and they're all working together in this situation. Yeah. What do you think about, what do you think of them? Are they, do you think they're stupid or what do you think?
I think they are they are different from us, but it is more, they have a different way of thinking with us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's basically just a different way of thinking. I mean, I suppose, I don't know if I feel, well, they're right. I mean, yeah, that's right. I mean, like the hammer, saw, log, hatchet, you use them all together, right? If you haven't got a log or something, then hammer and saw and hatchet are useless, right? So in that situation, it's kind of makes sense. And then with the 3 men and the boy, it kind of makes sense as well. So I think they're right. It's as you say, it's just a different way of thinking, right? And their way of thinking is kind of much more kind of situational, based on their experience. Whereas our way of thinking is more kind of is more abstract, something we learn in school, and as part of our education, we sort of use these categories. So it's like, the Uzbek peasants, I mean, I think it's not that they're stupid, it's just that they've never had any formal education. And given their lives, experience and the situation they are in is really what structures their thinking. And in that sense, it just makes sense. It's fine, really, nothing wrong with it. So it seems that they're kind of focused on the situation, right? It's a kind of a situational understanding of the world based on their experience. So anyway, what do we do, right? I suppose I think we use, I'm not sure, is categorization is a kind of abstract, right? It's a very abstract symbolic tool, I suppose. The idea of categorization, right? Where we categorize these things, right? I mean, we're taught to do that in school. And I guess it's a tool, it's a symbolic tool, it's kind of an abstract symbolic tool. So, then we say, well, hammer's a tool, a saw is a tool, a log isn't a tool, and a hatchet is a tool, so the odd one out is log, Yeah, so that's kind of how we do it, and we learn that in school. So I suppose the idea of categorization itself is a symbolic tool, right? I imagine that's how it works. And we learn how to use that tool in the way we think. So in other words, the symbolic tool structures the way we think. Yeah. Again, whoops, hang on. Just as if you say, don't think of elephant. Elephant structures the way you think. It makes you think of elephant. We use this symbolic tool of categorization. It's kind of abstract symbolic tool, and this actually structures the way we think. And it's difficult, once you learn it, it's difficult not to do it. And in fact, it seems that all these other ones, this is another experiment, I guess, with these Uzbek peasants, where they thought about logical inference. And basically what they said here is, like, they say to the Uzbek peasants, okay, cotton can only grow where it is hot and dry. Yeah, cotton can only grow where it's hot and dry, and England is cold and damp. Right, so cotton can only grow where it's hot and dry. England is cold and damp. And then they say, can cotton grow in England? What's the answer?
The answer is cotton can't grow in England.
That's right. And it's like, it's like now it's like you're asking, obviously that's, it's the kind of easiest thing in the world, right? Because again, in education, we kind of use these kind of logical inference as a kind of as a tool for thinking, and it structures the way we think. Yeah. And so it's if you look at that now, you think, well, that's this really easy question. I mean, like, are you serious? I mean, obviously, right? If cotton can only grow where it's hot and dry, and England is cold and damp, can cotton grow in England? And then the Uzbek peasants say, I've no idea. Right? I've no idea. I've never been to England. How about that? What do you think about that one? Is that stupid or? I mean,
I don't think it's stupid, because they didn't learn, they didn't learn how to think in the
right.
school.
Yeah, right. It's like their whole way of thinking is really based on kind of their experience, right? And it's very similar to what Daniel Everett says about the Piraha tribe in the Amazon, where he says they don't have numbers, for example, right? Because they don't need them. And also they don't say anything unless they've actually experienced it, or somebody very close to them has experienced it. So it's like, it's in a way, it's a useful way of living, right? If you haven't experienced it, if you don't know, right? Then you say, well, I have no idea. I mean, okay, you say cotton can only grow, it's hot and dry, maybe, and then during you say England is cold and damp. I don't know, right? I've no idea. I've never been to England, right? So in other words, it's like it's completely based on their experience, and I guess you could say that for people living that kind of life, right? I mean, you're talking about these are Uzbek peasants in the 1930s, I believe, right? Well, those are useful, right? Useful ways of thinking, right? You keep things to your own experience. You're not going to say, oh, I'm going to decide this is true, right? The cotton can't grow in England. I just don't know, right? I mean, I've no experience. I've never been to England. I have no experience of this. I'm not going to say one way or another. I just simply don't know. And so that way of thinking is, as you suggest, it's kind of useful given that situation. But as you can see with logic, again, logic, I guess, is this abstract way of thinking that we learn in school. It's not very difficult, right? It's not difficult to learn, and it's kind of useful, right? And we do it. It may be useful in our lives, and it helps us pass tests, basically, right? And it's a kind of symbolic tool that we employ when we think, right? So in other words, it structures the way we think. So these symbolic, I'm just going to write that down again, actually, right? Because I think that's kind of an important point, right? So in other words, you can say symbolic tools structure thoughts. Yeah, I'm sorry, we keep repeating this, but I think it is quite important. I think it's quite easy to miss this point. So there is something going on inside, in other words. There's a processing, right? There's a kind of processing of information. So the symbolic tool structures thought, and the thought regulates activity. It allows us to solve the problem, for example, in this case. Okay, right. So what have I done? I'm in the wrong place. Don't want that. Okay, I know. Okay, right, good. Yeah, so I kind of labored that a bit, right? Because I think with sociocultural theory, you get carried away with that it's all about activity and it's all external. And I think it isn't, right? I mean, it's really about thinking, the relationship between symbolic symbols and signs, language, symbolic tools, and thought, right? And the way that thinking can then regulate activity, can help you to actually do things. In this case, solve a problem, right? About whether cotton grows in England. Okay, what's going on? Okay, so anyways, got logical inference, right? So this is kind of the symbolic tool that we use, right? And the basic idea is that if X, then Y. Yeah, it's kind of a simple thing. I mean, like, and you know, we just grow up with this in school. I mean, this is how they teach us, right? So if X then Y, you can actually sort of represent it like this as a mathematical formula. If X then Y, so in other words, if it's hot and dry, then you can grow cotton. If not hot and dry, then you can't grow cotton, right? So it's kind of easy, right, to figure that out. We know what that is, and it's logical inference. It's a basic kind of it's a tool for thinking, essentially. Yeah. And in fact, the Uzbek peasants could learn the new abstract ways of thinking quite easily. That's kind of interesting. I mean, even though they even if they're getting quite old, they can have a little bit of education, go to school for a little bit, and they just pick this up. And it was useful for them to pass tests, for example, maybe get a better job. And very often they'd use it in their ordinary everyday lives. So, it became useful for them, whereas previously it hadn't been any use at all. But it's an abstract symbolic tool, and it gives you a way of thinking about things, and we do it all the time. And related to that, the Uzbek peasants could learn the new abstract ways of thinking quite easily. Didn't take them long to do the categorization stuff. Didn't learn them take them long to do the logical inference stuff. pretty easy for them to learn. It seems they're also related to second language acquisition. Language learning, learning a new language may also lead to a kind of reformation of your mental system. In other words, by learning a second language, this may change the way you think in some way. What do you think? Do you think that's true? I mean, your experience, like learning English, for example, would you say that learning English as a second language has helped you to change the way you think in any serious way? Be honest.
Well, I think so.
Yeah. Any examples?
For example, about English.
Yeah.
How do you call it? The casual way of saying. I forgot the word.
Like slang.
Yeah, slang.
Right.
For example, slang. We can learn about the way of behavior towards to like close friend.
Yeah.
Like I think we can learn about the we can learn about how to behave to close friends or close relationship someone with language, and
Right.
I think it's kind of culture thing.
Yeah.
So I can learn about new things from that language.
Right. That's a really good example, I think. I mean, I would say, I mean, I think, you know, English language comes from that kind of debate culture, that sort of individualist culture. And I think very often people will kind of, you know, sort of like make fun of other people. I mean, sort of mock them and sort of use kind of maybe rough language, which maybe you don't get so much in Japanese, for example. I think, you know, there's less irony, there's less slang, for example. Sort of you know, the speaking roughly to other people isn't tolerated to the same extent. And I think that, yeah, that's a definite, you know, cultural difference. And those kind of cultural differences, obviously, you can't separate that from language. I mean, they're just built in together. You know, mental development takes place in culture. Language is part of culture. You can't separate those things. So yeah, as you suggest, and that's a good example. I think you get that, right? That sort of just comes with learning a second language. It kind of gives you an insight, and sometimes it takes a bit of time to make sense of it. But I think it's a valuable thing, and that's why I think it's valuable to learn a second language. You know, even if it's not that useful, it helps you to sort of change the way you're thinking. So I think it's valuable. Yeah, so I suppose, you know, would this be useful? I think it is useful in a way. I mean, like, you know, you develop a new way of thinking. You see things in slightly different ways. Yeah, at least, you know, I think it's healthy. I don't know if it's very often might not help. It might not be useful, particularly useful in any sort of ordinary practical way. But I think it's a healthy situation, that it, you know, helps you to think about things in different ways. And you know, if you're trying to motivate students, I think maybe that's not a bad way to motivate them. Say, listen, you know, if you study English hard, it kind of gives you a kind of a different way of seeing things, right? And you know, that's healthy. Right? It's healthy to be able to see things from a different perspective. But that seems to be, you know, decent. motivation. Better than saying things like, you know, you study English so you can help foreigners who've lost their way in Tokyo, for example. You know, it's a nice, healthy situation. You can see things from a slightly different perspective. Gives you a different way of seeing the world. So I don't know if it's useful, but it's healthy, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so there's certain language-related problems, right? Which they use socio-cultural theory in as well. They were dealing with people who had mental difficulties, particularly related to language. So people have had brain damage, right? And they found it very difficult to tell a story. Yeah. So in other words, you know, we have to do this all the time. What happened to you today? I went to school. There was a bomb scare. I came home and stuff like that. Right. And people have had this, you know, damage to their brains. Can't do it. Right. And this is a kind of very simple experiment. But they kind of gave them bits of the story on slips of paper. They kind of separate the story out, give them the bits, and then the person is able to put them into the order and then tell the story, right? So again, you've got a symbolic tool, the bits of paper with parts of the story written on it, and then they use that tool to structure their thinking, yeah, structure the way they think, and then they're able to tell a story. Yeah, they're able to complete the activity. So again, I want to just sort of emphasize this. You get the symbol, right? In this case, the piece of paper with the story written, the bits of the story written on it. That's the symbolic, right? That's the symbolic inputs here. And you use it as the symbolic tool. The symbolic tool then structures the thinking, right? Helps the patient in this case to think, and then with the thinking is then structured, then this allows the patient to tell the story, to actually complete the activity. So it's a lot of it is internal. Right? A lot of it is like processing, internal processing, and I think that a lot is very often it's missed in the way people see sociocultural theory. And I think this is kind of important because I think it relates very much to what you wrote in your paper, right? You were doing stuff like, you know, CLIL and soft CLIL and translanguaging and things like that. Well, it's really, I mean, that was really about using symbolic tools, right? Using particularly first language. Right? First language is a symbolic tool. With the translanguaging, you've got, for example, you know, sort of support in first language. This then structures the thought of the students, right? Structures the way they think, and then this newly structured thought then allows them to solve the problem. In this case, it would be, for example, things like having a discussion, right? Having a discussion in Welsh, for example, right? That would be the classic translanguaging situation. You want to have a discussion. You want to have a discussion in Welsh. It's difficult to do that, right? So let's have a discussion in Welsh. Can't do it, but give them a handout in English, right? The handout in English then structures the way they think, right? And then the way they think is then structured. It allows them, right? Gives them support. It scaffolds, right? Scaffolds the activity, right? And then they are able. Then the kids are actually able to have a discussion in Welsh, and this transformed. Right? It actually really changed the way that Welsh is taught. Right? I mean, saved the language. Amazing, really. The soft CLIL thing. Soft CLIL would be where, you know, the students have already studied something in Japanese, right, in their ordinary classes. And then you give them the similar material in English, and then they find it a lot easier, right? So in other words, if you just give them the English, right? Just give them the English, it's going to be too difficult, probably, right? At least for some of them. If you have them already done it in Japanese, they've already done this in different classes, some history class or something. They've done that in Japanese. That's that. So they've used the first language as a symbolic tool. Yeah. You've given them this symbolic tool. They now understand that it helps. It structures the way they think, and then when they go to the CLIL material in target language in English, it becomes a lot easier, right? So as you can see here, right, the patients, and these kind of patients with some sort of mental, brain damage, basically, they cannot tell a story, they're not able to do it, but you give them bits of paper, right, bits of the story on slips of paper, and they can rearrange it. This is a symbolic tool that then structures the way they think. And then when their thinking is now structured in a particular way, they're able to rearrange, tell the story, they're able to solve the problem, right? They're able to carry out the activity. So it's scaffolding, right? Scaffolding, and I think that is exactly what you were talking about when you were talking about translanguaging, right? The possible uses of translanguaging and, say, for example, soft CLIL. Right? You're using scaffolding techniques. Well, that's what it is. Scaffolding techniques is really using, right? I think I'm going to write this down actually, because I think that's kind of important. So you get, for example, scaffolding. Is basically using symbolic tools to structure thought, so that, say, some people, students, can complete an activity successfully. Yeah, and I think that's basically what it is, right? And then you compare that to mainstream second language acquisition, right? Theory, which for a very long time has said all English, all English, all English. Basically saying, don't use first language as scaffolding, right? They don't seem to mind pictures and things like that, but they don't want to use first language. Well, it seems a bit crazy, actually. Yeah. You should be, I think there's no particular problem with using first language as a symbolic tool, right? And it's probably the best symbolic tool to structure thought, right? And then if you structure thought so the students can complete an activity successfully, well, that is the goal, right? That's what you're trying to do, in fact. Okay. All right, let me just get back in here. Oops. What's going on? Anyway, ESL speakers, yeah. ESL speakers have a difficult narrative task, for example. With intermediate speakers, performance breaks down, right? You're not able to do it, right? Advanced speakers are able to perform the task, right? Well, what do you do? I mean, like, in the case of the translanguaging and in the case of the soft CLIL, for example, you give intermediate speakers some help, right? You scaffold their performance by using symbolic tools, in this case, first language material, to help them to solve the problem. Yeah. So it seems that this scaffolding approach makes a lot of sense. And use of first language makes a lot of sense, as you said in your paper. Okay, advanced speakers, they can, right? Advanced speakers can speak to other people, right? They can speak to other people with no problem, and they can think, use the second language, the second language in order to think, right? They can actually do that. Maybe don't do it. But that's really what an advanced speaker is, right? For intermediate speakers or for beginners, they probably need some help. And usually to help, we'll use symbolic tools. And maybe the most useful symbolic tool is first language. Anyway, what kind of help is appropriate for ESL learners? Pictures, first language. I would say if pictures is okay, why not? Why not first language, right? In mainstream second language acquisition, for a long time, they'd say, yeah, we can scaffold with pictures, right? That's no problem, but you mustn't scaffold with first language. Why? Why not, right? And then with the experience with Welsh, with translanguaging, they saved the language. They saved the language by using first language. So it makes it a lot of sense to do that, I think. Right? So in other words, people have been talking rubbish for a long time there. Anyway, it's really kind of, a lot of this now really is kind of looking at the connection between thinking and speaking, right? You can use a picture. And the picture is then going to structure the way you think. I could show you a picture of an elephant. I could say the word elephant, right? And that's going to make you think elephant, right? You could sort of you could show a picture of an elephant, or you could just show the picture, or you could show the word elephant in some language, right? It's basically, it's a symbolic, right? It's a symbol, it's a sign, and this is going to make you think something. Right? It's going to structure the way you think, right? So there's a very close relationship between thinking and speaking, but it's not the same thing. Right? This is basically what they say in sociocultural theory. Thinking and speaking, they're very closely related, but they're not the same thing. Yeah. At the same time, they're not completely independent. They're kind of connected, right? They're connected. And I would say the way to think about it is that thinking is structured by symbolic means, right? So they're not completely, thinking and speaking are not completely independent. Is there a contradiction there? Basically what they say is that public speech completes private thought. Yeah. So in other words, you have a thought, right? You have a thought, and then you use that thought to speak, right? To actually, to act, I suppose, to complete an activity. And so in that sense, speech, actually speaking, completes the thought, right? You have the private thought, so I have the private thought now, and then I'm speaking. I complete that action way. And we use words for both, right? So that's the relationship, suggested relationship between thinking and speaking. And the idea is they're both tool-mediated, goal-directed actions. Tool-mediated, so you're using a tool, in this case, language, and it's goal-directed, you're doing it for some reason. Okay, and this relates to what's called activity theory. I'll just go through this very briefly. With activity theory, the idea is the mind, the mind, we talk about the mind, it's not just some biological thing, right? It's like the idea is that the activity of the brain, which may be biological, right, is coming under control of cultural tools, right? So we're controlling the activity of the brain, structuring the way we think, in other words, right? So the processes of the brain are being controlled, being structured by tools, right? And language is the most important. So again, you've got this basic idea: language, symbolic tools, structure thinking. Yeah? It allows the activity of the brain to come under control of cultural tools. So you have goal-directed activities. So for example, examples of this would be, if you're hungry, you look for food. It's kind of a simple idea, really. Yeah. You want to satisfy your hunger, so you look for food. That's a goal-directed activity. You want to become literate, you learn to read and write. It's a goal-directed activity. Yeah, that's the basic idea. So activity is really about goal-directed activities. They use the example of hunting. Yeah, I'll just take you through this very briefly. You can look at the paper later. In hunting, there's a biological need to satisfy hunger, right? So there's you're really hungry, in other words. That's a biological need. But there's different cultural forms to hunting, right? In a way, they're all doing the same thing, but it's all doing it in different ways. Yeah, we're all trying to get some food, satisfy hunger, but we have different cultural forms for doing that. You might be just, for example, going to a supermarket and buying food rather than hunting for animals. Yeah. So the basic biological need is the same, but there are different cultural forms. This is kind of an interesting one, I think, related to activity theory. You got an experiment, right, done on Brazilian mothers, right? So it's an experiment in Brazil, and basically they looked at mothers in rural settings in the countryside or in the jungle, and mothers in the cities, in the towns and the cities. Yeah, and the activity was to copy a scene, right, as a picture, and they have to copy it, right? And the urban mothers, we write as teachers in this case, what they did, they scaffold it with verbal suggestions. Right? In other words, they're using words, right? Using words to scaffold the performance, and they'll say things like, "Why don't you do this?" or "Why don't you do that?" Right? Maybe it's a good idea to do this, or maybe it's a good idea. What do you think about this? Right? And so using, kind of lots of verbal suggestions, using words to kind of push the child in the right direction. And in that situation, children made some mistakes, right? But they carried out all the actions, and they learned how to solve the problem. Yeah. So in other words, don't give them too much help, right? If you give them too much help, then you don't really learn how to solve the problem. I think that kind of makes sense. It's a pretty simple idea, I think. Yeah. You're scaffolding, you're trying to offer some help, but you still make sure that the child or the student has to do something for himself or herself. So in this situation, this is with the urban mothers. They do provide a lot of suggestions, right? Verbal suggestions. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Oh, what are you going to do with that one? What do you think about that? You ask questions, that kind of thing. And the children make a few mistakes, but they do everything for themselves, right? And they learned how to solve the problem. And I was compared with rural mothers. Yeah. In the countryside, the rural mothers gave more explicit directions. Yeah? And it was almost as if the mothers were using the children as tools, right? So you actually hear like this, the children became tools to complete the scene. Yeah. And the idea was the rural children, they didn't make many mistakes, right? But they failed to learn how to do it. They're basically just following directions of the mothers. So there's a big difference there between the urban mothers and the rural mothers. Yeah, the urban mothers kind of, just asking a few questions, making some suggestions, but allowing the kids to decide for themselves. Right, the kids have to actually do quite a bit of work and think for themselves. Whereas the rural mothers, they give very, very explicit directions: do this, do that, put that there. Yeah. And the children were basically just doing exactly what the mothers said. and they didn't make many mistakes, but they didn't really learn how to do it. So there's a difference there between the urban mothers and the rural mothers. Any idea why there would be a difference like that? Why would the urban mothers be different from the rural mothers? Kai, any idea? No idea?
Sorry, I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it's not that easy actually to think about it, but they noticed there was quite a big difference around the way that in the way that they approached the problem. And it's like, I think the suggestion is that the urban mother's goal was different. It's like the urban mothers, their goal was to educate the child. Yeah. They thought, the important thing is the child's education. Whereas the rural mothers, the goal was economic, right? In other words, the goal was to make money or avoid losing money. Yeah. And so it's like, in that sense, the goal wasn't really the education of the child. And so, the goal is important in activity theory and in sociocultural theory. What is your goal? That's going to make a big difference, right? So even though it was the same task, right? They were doing the same basic task. Because the goal was different, you can actually say it's a different activity, right? So the fact that the goal that you have actually affects the activity itself. So same task, different activity. And then when you think about your students, right? You say, for example, you're going to be teaching English in high school or something like that, right? Well, then the students' goals might be different, right? So then, even if they're all doing the same thing, the activity might be different in that sense, right? Depends on the students' orientation to the task. So, for example, students might not care if they learn the language, right? They don't really care about it. They just want to pass tests, right? So if the goal is, if that's the goal, that's going to be different from a student who really, really wants to learn the language. Yeah. So students who just want to pass the test, you can say, well, the goal, it's like the active, maybe the task is the same. They're all doing the same thing. They're all doing the same task, but the goal, if the goal is different, then the activity is different in each case. That's what sociocultural theory suggests. In some situations, they say that students just want to avoid anything foreign. Yeah, I mean, so their goal is to avoid anything foreign. And so sometimes you'll do things just to finish it, right? Do the test, finish the activity. No real interest in learning the language. Yeah, so motivation, I suppose. Yeah, what are the goals? If the goal is different, then the activity is different. Yeah. Culturally motivated activities, right? Might be work. Do you do something to get a job? Do you do something to pass tests, for example, to get higher up the ladder of education, or are you just interested in making money? So on, or are you interested in just playing a game, for example, having a bit of fun? Yeah. So there's all kinds of different motivations. Okay, just very, very briefly, let's go through this, the last bit from the chapter. You've got internalization in a speech. Yeah. The idea here is the source of consciousness is outside the head and rooted in social activity. Yeah. Now I think, you know, this is kind of, it can be misleading, right? Because it's like, okay, the activity is outside and it's all about activity theory, right? And, you know, it's like the thing you learn is outside, right? But there's, the tools are being used and those tools are structuring the way you think, right? So there is actually a relationship between the outside and the inside. And at first, an activity is organized and regulated by others. So for example, teachers or parents are organizing and regulating the activity. But eventually this comes over voluntary control, right? The activity is organized by other people, but they're using symbolic means. This structures the way you think, and the way you think allows you to regulate your activity. And as you do that, this comes under voluntary control. You've got things like classification. We talked about that before. You know, the tools and not tools, the hatchet, the hammer, the log, and so on. It seems that biology may provide a foundation, but concrete schema are determined by culture, right? In other words, you know, in some ways we're all the same, but at the same time, all cultures are different, right? There's also the idea of, like, for example, in sports, you get internalization of learning, I suppose, right? Experts in sports, for example, can visualize the result of a shot. You know, if, like, say for example, playing pool or something like some sports, they can actually visualize, they can actually see this, right? In other words, the thinking is completely under control, right? The way that you think has been, you've used the tools so much, right? You've played this game so often and so many times that actually this, you can see it before you, without even doing it, right? You don't actually need to use these, use the actual physical tools. You can actually sort of see it, right? And so you use the symbolic tools in that sense. Structure the way you think, and if you do it enough, it actually becomes completely internalized. And then with difficult tasks, you may seek help from other people. You may use a calculator or a computer, etc. We do that all the time, right? I mean, like, you know, that's a difficult task. You may ask for somebody's help. It may give you some verbal help or symbolic help. This structures the way you think. You can also go to a book, right? You can read the book. This then structures the way you think, right? And then this over time will lead to improvements. You can use a book, a calculator, or a computer. Right? So you use all of these different cultural tools when dealing with difficult tasks. And then just very, very briefly, let's talk about the zone of proximal development, which people talk about a lot. It's kind of a simple idea, really. They say that the idea is that higher mental activities appear twice, right? Once they appear between the individual or some other personal or cultural artifact, book, for example. So say, for example, you're going to teach me, I don't know, let's say how to use a computer. Right? You're going to teach me how to use a computer. That activity, right? That activity of learning to use a computer appears in you because you know how to do it, right? You know how to do it and you show it to me, right? So it appears between you and me, right? And then later, as I learn how to do it, right? As I learn how to do it, it appears inside me. Yeah, that is fair enough, but it's like, I think it's important to realize there's definitely thinking, right? Okay, you teach me, you use, maybe explain how to do it using words and so on, using cultural tools like the computer to show me how to do it. So it's external in that sense, but that then structures the way I think. Right, that structures the way I think, structures my thoughts, and then this is internalized over time, so I'm able to do it. Right, but that's the way the zone of proximal development is explained, that it appears twice. It appears once between me and you, for example, and then later it's internalized by me. Yeah, but it still involves thought, right? You've still got these cultural tools. You're using language, for example, and it's kind of it's stretching the way I think, and then as I'm carrying out the activity, I'm actually able to internalize that. So the ZPT, zone of proximal development, is the difference between what you can do alone and when supported by someone else or by a book, right, etc. Right. So in other words, if what can I learn if I look at a book, and if I don't look at a book, right? The difference between that is the ZPD, or whatever we want to call it. Yeah. So it's kind of a simple idea, really. People make a big fuss about the zone of proximal development, but that's really all it is. It's a very simple thing. And then also, like as we learn, say for example, I go to a book and I learn how to use a computer from a book, right? The words in the book structure the way I think. That enables me to then use the computer. But the way I do that is then transformed. I have my own way of doing it. I'm not just copying. Yeah, that's the idea. And that is basically it, guys, right? So I've taken you through that. Right? I've taken you through that that chapter, right? I've covered most of it, I think, and I've actually put that up on web class, right? So you can actually check that out. And yes, I think that's basically it. So I think it relates to, particularly relates to the sociocultural theory. I think relates to what you wrote in your paper, particularly the idea of scaffolding. That you're kind of, by scaffolding, by helping people to do stuff by using first language, for example, with soft CLIL or with translanguaging, you kind of put the students in the zone of proximal development, right? You make it possible for them to learn a bit more, basically, right? You provide them with symbolic means, quite possibly first language material. You make something easier for them, right? You actually sort of structure the way they think, so it becomes easier for them. And as it becomes easier for them, what they can achieve is more than otherwise, right? In the translanguaging situation, they're using first language handouts. What the students can achieve is better than what they could achieve without that. So you scaffold, right? You scaffold their performance. You use the symbolic means. This then structures the way they think, and as the way they think is then structured in a certain way, this enables them to regulate their behavior, and they can do more than they would be able to do otherwise. Yeah, so it's a kind of, using symbolic means, but you're actually changing the way they think. And as you change the ways you control and structure the way they think, you then enable them to do more than they would otherwise. Yeah. So that's basically that. Okay, guys. Well, anyway, tell you what, that's that really. I think, I don't know what I took you through that chapter, so maybe that's going to do it. I'm actually recording this as well, I think. I'm recording it.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, okay. So I'll probably put that up on I'll put that up in web class later, and then so Neil's not here, right?
No, I think he's saying he's sick.
He's sick, is he? Okay, so he can check that. He can check that out later, anyway, if he wants. So yeah, okay. So what? Anyway, any comments, guys? Anything? Any questions or comments?
It's not about the social cultural theory thing, but I think I have a question about this class.
Yeah.
Do we have? Sorry, I haven't been in the gym from the beginning, so I might have missed it that part. But do we have a class Zoom next week?
I wasn't going to. I mean, unless you really want to.
Is if we have the Zoom, it should be not on the Monday, right?
I don't mind really.
Okay. I just
what
I
do you want
wanted
to
to
do?
ask.
Yeah.
Huh?
What do you want to do?
I don't know. I've learned pretty much about the social culture study. So
yeah. Right. Well, I think I think it ties in with what you wrote. I mean, in very, very clear ways. So I think I reckon if you go to if you look at that chapter, I think it'll probably make a lot of sense. So unless you really, really want to have another Zoom meeting or something, we'll say we finished.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Okay then. Good. Any other comments? No? Okay, guys. In that case, good luck and have a good time. Bye-bye.
Is it your last day?
My last day. Yeah, this is my last day.
Oh, that's so sad.
Is it really? I don't feel sad, really.
Really?
Yeah.
So you never come back to university? I mean, the building?
I will actually this next Monday, isn't it? Actually, couldn't think of it. Yeah, Monday. Next Monday, I will be in first period.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was supposed to be for next Monday. We've lost the last week's class, of course. Right.
Yeah.
Tell you what. If you want to, if you want to do something, mail me. Right.
Okay.
Mail me and tell me, so then we can arrange Zoom or something if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, guys. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.